Hi, I'm Jodie Marsh, General Manager of Sangwon Estate Wines, and today's DVD is on the ageing of wines. Have you ever been in that really embarrassing and somewhat disappointing position where you've pulled that perfectly cellared bottle of wine and noticed that it's just not tasting as well, and maybe you've left it too long and you're about to share it with your guests and friends? Well, I'm here today to provide you with some tips on how to avoid that awful position. In a moment you'll see a DVD of a superstar in the wine industry. He's not only the President of the Sommeliers Australia, he's also the sole contributor to James Halliday's Wine Companion, which is Australia's leading wine guide, and he's also a highly sought after wine judge. So there's no one more perfect to talk to us today about the ageing of wines than Mr. Ben Edwards. So we're going to be talking about ageing of wines. And my first question for you, Ben, is when you're tasting a young wine, what characteristics do you look for to gauge that it's going to age well?
Wine is a complex beast. It's a living thing. So when we look at wines as young wines, we really are crystal balling and we want to see where it's going to go. And the truest indicators tend to be, quite simply, the concentration of fruit character, the structural components in red wines especially, with tannin and acidity. And when you have those three things in equal parts in terms of their depth of character, in terms of their concentration, then you've got a good indicator of how long it's going to go. The other thing too that's really important is the grape variety, and there are certain grape varieties that are going to be more age-worthy, and the bigger red grape varieties such as Shiraz and Cabernet Sauvignon are the ones that tend to age the longest and the most gracefully. So when we look at that and we see how much oak there is, how much tannin, how much acidity and how much fruit, then we can quite confidently say how long it's going to age. But that is all under the proviso, of course, that it's been aged in good cellaring conditions. So keeping it out of heat and fluctuations of temperature, and of course excessive cold's equally as bad. Vibration is also bad for wine, so make sure you keep your wine in an area where there's not a lot of vibration, like under the stairs or near appliances that might be vibrating regularly. And also light's actually very bad for wine as well. So if you can keep it in the dark, you can keep it in a moist place, if it's under cork, not so important under screw cap, but also just in a constant temperature. And even higher temperatures doesn't matter so much. So say your cellar's constantly at 20 degrees, that's fine as long as it's constant. But it's when it fluctuates from 13 to 28 to 20 that you start to see. It just makes the ageing process more rapid.
Right. And so as an average punter that's out there tasting wines and a young wine, specifically on the palate, what are they looking for to say equal age? So what sort of characteristics on the palate?
Well, it's an interesting one because most wine is made to be consumed early in its life. And so they should just be looking for intensity of flavour and length. And so when wines tend to have long character on the palate and the flavour really sticks around on your palate, that's probably going to be a good indicator that the wine will age gracefully over time. The reality is most people don't drink aged wines, and there are windows of earlier drinking opportunity. Sometimes wines are just young and raw, but most wines are released into the marketplace. But if you want to age them, just make sure you look after the right cellaring conditions.
And what about tannins and things like that? The more tannins, would that indicate that it ages longer versus less tannins?
Jodie, at the end of the day, it's all about balance. The balance between fruit, tannin and acid has to be there. And anybody, whether they know a lot or a little bit about wine, can figure that out. Because if a wine is bitter and astringent, it's just too tannic, then it's out of balance with the fruit. So those tannins will change with time, they will soften, but the reality is it needs to be in balance in the first place. So if a wine has lovely plush fruit and it's tannic, and the two are working well together, and it's got the acidity to give it line and length, then it will go the journey.
Okay, so now at the other end, I've pulled out a beautiful bottle from my cellar.
Yes.
How do I know that it's ready to drink now versus letting it cellar for longer?
Well, that's a very good question. Read the companion and see what the optimum drinking window is.
There's a plug.
No, look, I think it's very much based on the individual preference. So if you like young, fresh, juicy wines, drink them when you buy them. If you prefer tertiary characters where, you start to see forest floor, sort of dried leather characters, tar, licorice, and all these other things that come with age, mushroom, sort of fungal characters, then, look for wines that have got a bit of age on them. So it's very much finding out what you like and why you like it. So, I particularly would much rather drink my wines younger and fresher rather than too old. So if you're thinking about putting a dozen away, squirreling them away, just drink one every year sort of thing, you know what I mean? And drink them at the right time.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming today and talking to us about the ageing of wines.
No, it's my pleasure.
It's been a privilege to stand beside you.
Thanks, Jodie.
Thanks, Ben.